she has to say, well, now I need to practically, provide the support that I was getting from my husband. I need to find a way to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's real. Yeah.
And that's kind of related to another one, the role change. Like, what happened? What gain or loss resulted in this change, and it usually impacts the role that a student is playing. So, and the role is really like not necessarily always a positional thing. It's not always, oh, you're a mom, or oh, you're in this career, but it's what do you spend a significant amount of your time doing, and what's changed that now you spend a different amount of your time doing something else. And also looking at kind of like how long do they have? Is this a temporary situation that they're trying to overcome, or is this more of a long-term situation? And then looking at kind of what assets they bring, like what previous experiences have they had, and what have they gone through in the past, what strengths are they drawing from, and also what kind of other things are they juggling, like what are other concurrent stresses that they have, and then essentially what are the things that they're going to look as success metrics, like what are the things that they're going to say, I can tell that I'll be successful when these things are present. So that's all kind of the different, I guess, aspects that would describe a student's situation, or even just a person in any kind of circumstances situation when they're in a transition.
Yeah, and that's situation. So we have situation, self, support, and strategies. Tackle self, if you would.
Yeah, so now self has to do with this identity of essentially you have kind of I guess the personal aspect of it, where these are the things that make the person, they're the way they identify, and they could be the groups they identify with, it could be cultural implications. It's essentially the way they see the world. And so that's, it could be their socioeconomic status, any number of things, their age, their gender, even their health. Their health could impact how they see themselves. And then what they have with them in terms of kind of their resources for coping, and like kind of how mature they are, how much, character they've developed, and how, optimistic or pessimistic they are, or their attitude towards life. And so those are the kind of different aspects that feed into the self when you're considering, okay, what's going to be at work in this transition. And then I guess the next part in this, this theory is the support part. And support is really, the types of support people have, and then the way it shows up, kind of like the functions of support, and then also the way they measure support. And
right. Yeah, that's huge, actually, because a lot of people, I think, assume certain things. They're like, oh, you got some resources. And they're like, yeah, but I don't see them as valuable, right?
Right. And so a lot of people don't realize that they have what they have already. And I guess a common theme throughout this is trying to mine for assets and then just also keep an eye for liabilities. So it's like, what do you have going for you, and how can we really build upon that and like create an awesome future for you given those assets, but then also plan for your liabilities so that we can kind of say, all right, so these are things that may pose challenges as you're making your transition. And so support is one of those assets that it's like it could show up in relationships, as far as like intimate relationships usually, and family units too, friends, and then also just more kind of like institutionalized support. And so those are usually the components we look at, and then also we look at like, how does your interaction with those support systems form how you see the world, and essentially your prospects moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've seen some people who maybe see support, but they don't. I already referenced that. They don't see it as support, but then maybe it's begrudging. Maybe they're not necessarily embracing it. Maybe it's support, but it comes with strings attached, right? That might be in the form of a student loan. Like, yeah, I have the money, but I don't necessarily want to use it because it means I have to pay it back with interest. And yeah, I could see that coming with an asterisk, I guess.
Right, and then, well, that's a good point, because a lot of the times this support aspect is part of the thing that's causing the stressors.
Yeah.
They're saying, okay, well, I've had this kind of support, and now I'm planning to lose the support. So a lot of times when you think, looking at the assets angle, you're looking at, okay, what's the stable support, and then the liabilities, what's the temporary or, support that's likely to have some kind of change in this transition.
Or even like, yeah, I'm living with my parents, and so I don't have rent, but my mom is emotionally abusive. Like there's warfare going on in the home, and so like I wish I could get out from under that, but I'm financially strapped. So it looks like support, it looks like an asset, but it comes with this this qualifier, I guess.
Yeah, and for a lot of students, it's also, if they're coming from a community where they're one of the only people in their community to be going to higher education, for example. Like I had a student that I was working with, and all of his friends had no kind of understanding of what he was trying to do in college. And so he would go hang out with them, and they would encourage him to do, smoke weed and just chill and just forget, his stress and issues and stuff like that. And that's his support, So his support is actually, for him emotionally, and, it's kind of a support, but then also it's a liability, because he's saying, man, this is not helping me stay on task and, complete my assignments and show up to class on time and do these other behaviors that are associated with success. But at the same time, he doesn't really have anybody else. So
right, yeah, it's not like you can just walk away. It seems so convenient and so privileged to be like, well, just leave your quote unquote friends and be lonely. It's like, no, I don't really have that luxury. Talk about the strategies, because I think that's my favorite one of all these, because like it actually is where the rubber meets the road. It's like, how do you make this happen, right?
Right, and so the strategies really are looking at, essentially, it's kind of like the type of stuff you probably talk about all the time. It's what you do with difficult circumstances and how you cope and how you essentially take positive action. So it could be like information seeking, could be how, and some of it's kind of related to just like optimism almost. It's like believing that there's something out there. And so usually just opening the kind of space for ideas is really helpful for strategies, and then leading to a place of direct action. So there's, information seeking strategies, there's direct action strategies, but also like essentially inhibition of action. So like what could, how
what do
we
not
constrict,
do? Yeah.
taking action. And then there's also this kind of notion of having behaviors that are really aligned with this kind of idealized version of yourself moving forward. And so those are the kind of categories of strategies we're looking at when helping students in their transition and to really manage the stressors that they're experiencing. And especially in the community college, what I think is really helpful is to let the students see this as a time for them to become what they could be. And I think that really drives the whole process.
That's super cool, and I love that you phrased it that way. Oftentimes I find myself either in session or I'm counseling or I should say I'm mentoring my students or my interns and saying, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what does your client want to be when they grow up? And I use that specifically because it harkens to a day and time when we were young and dreamy and the world was our oyster, so to speak. And so many times we get so caught up in the busyness of life that we fail to stop and say, where am I going? Right. And what do I want to be when I grow up? And I think if you apply that pause and just say, where are you headed? What's this for? What are you doing this for? Are you doing it out of compulsion or unconscious function? Or are you doing it because you really want something? I think that makes people really re-engage, and it gives a hope, right? It puts an end goal to the thing that they're doing, and it's not just, well, I'm going to college to get a degree. It's like, no, this is the vehicle to which I will achieve my hopes and my dreams, and it allows people to, I guess, to settle in and let their minds wander a little bit, and that sounds really, I don't know, encouraging, I guess, to me, at least to my ears. Do you see that when you pose that to people?
Yeah, I think something that it's become a little bit more popular, and I've been using this, and I teach a class on. So essentially a freshman transition class. And one of the things we do is we have this project, and it's essentially like a career planning project. Like, I'm going to plan for my next step after I go to college. And what a lot of students are expecting is, well, what anybody would expect, right? You just, you plan it out. You see what the details are. You figure out how much it's going to cost. You figure out all the different, prerequisites and all different, bells and whistles that go into it, and then you plan it out, right? And what I found is that's not very engaging. I mean, it's like this transactional approach where students kind of feel like they're at the mercy of this, system, and they become a cog in a machine, and it's just not...
Sucks the life out of it.
Light them up.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks the life out of it.
Yeah. And so to frame it in a way where it's like, there are all kinds of things you could do with your life. And you're teeming with possibility. Let's explore what could be. And then going from that kind of a place where it's like, man, you know what? There's actually like a half dozen different lives that I could live. There's all these different career paths I could explore. I mean, it really comes from a place of abundance, where you really could create all kinds of meaning with your life. And once they get tuned into that, man, it's really it takes on kind of a different kind of air about it. And I think that's where students really want to be, is because they want to say, I know that I got to, for example, a lot of students say, I got to get my gen eds out the way. That's a real common.
Yeah.
Core
classes.
Or I got to get a good, a job that pays good. Or, and there's these different things that's like we have these ways of interpreting why we're doing something, and a lot of them are inherited. And so it's just like, well, we're just kind of parroting back. But when we're given the opportunity to say, what do you want to create? Man, it's just empowering. And so that's what I think, helping people move from a place of something's been taken from me because I'm leaving the thing I knew, and now I'm going into an area where I know nothing, to going into an area of knowing nothing is just like the price of admission for experiencing what I could be and realize the tremendous potential that I have.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to hear you talk like that, at least to my ears. But my ears have been trained to listen for inspiring things, and I don't know that everybody's ears have been trained to listen for that. And I think a lot of people who I deal with who have suffered lifetimes of trauma and neglect and abuse, their ears hear what you just said, and they hear, well, yeah, that's easy to say from your position. Or they hear, something that triggers a response that says, "If only I had the resources," or I don't have the access that you, or it's easy for you to say because you've already done it. How do you talk to the help rejecting complainant, to use a clinical term, people who hear the help, they reject it, and then they continue complaining. That's a psychological term